This is Taya Graham reporting for the Real News Network in Baltimore City, Maryland. I'm standing outside the Baltimore City Police Union headquarters where a controversy is brewing over police reform. For Baltimore resident Calvin Wilks, civilian control of police is not an abstract idea. He is homeless and jobless, due in part to this encounter with cops at the Inner Harbor in 2014. Caught on camera, it shows Calvin and his friends taken to the ground by police as they were leaving after a dispute inside of one of the pavilions. Calvin ended up in the hospital and jail. The consequences for him were harsh. He filed an internal affairs complaint alleging police brutality, but learned recently it was not sustained.
Found it not sustained, meaning that the officer wasn't right, they wasn't wrong, or they couldn't find any evidence saying that it was misconduct in the play and anything of that nature.
A ruling he thinks reveals the flaws in the process: lack of outside oversight.
Do you think that was a fair assessment of what happened to you?
Not at all. Clearly, after me going through the process of courts and after seeing other videos and pictures of the incident, it was clearly that the police was wrong.
So he turned to the body of last resort in Baltimore for residents who believe they are mistreated by police, the Civilian Review Board. Formed in 1999, the board is comprised of civilians who review all internal police investigations. However, it is essentially powerless, its ruling unenforceable. But at least for people like Wilks, it offers a place to turn where civilians, not police, review the evidence. But now the city's powerful police union, the FOP, is taking aim at the very body that gives people like Calvin hope. In a lawsuit filed last month, the FOP alleges the Civilian Review Board does not have the legal right to inspect personnel records, a key part of the process for investigation. The suit calls for a halt to the board's work. It is a provocative move, say critics, particularly as the FOP is now fighting civilian involvement on another front, keeping civilians off internal disciplinary bodies called trial boards. Their inclusion was a major part of reform laws passed in Annapolis last year. But even then, FOP President Vince Canales argued that civilian oversight in any form was inappropriate.
Well, we believe that basically it takes a law enforcement officer to know what a law enforcement officers deal with. It's no different than the military and the way that the military handles their disciplinary process, as well as, funny as it may seem, the legislature and how they handle internal issues.
Which is why the Maryland ACLU has stepped in. Earlier this week, they filed an amicus brief against the lawsuit, arguing the civilian review should continue investigating.
I think the FOP's lawsuit speaks volumes about the degree of institutional unwillingness and hostility to even the most minimal forms of civilian accountability, transparency, and oversight.
ACLU lead attorney David Rocha says the FOP's arguments don't hold legal water.
The brief that we filed points out both the utter lack of legal support for any of the things that the FOP is saying as a legal matter, but also importantly talks about this broad national consensus about the importance of civilian review, civilian participation, civilian accountability, civilian transparency, and brings those perspectives before the court.
And that the constant fight against civilian oversight reveals just how entrenched the battle is against civilian oversight.
The fact that 17 years after the Civilian Review Board was created here in Baltimore, when nothing has changed as a matter of law, that it is only now when these baby steps are being made that the FOP files this frivolous lawsuit saying, in essence, the entire concept of civilian review in Maryland is illegal, speaks volumes about where the FOP is compared to the rest of the state, the city that it is supposed to that its members are supposed to serve, and where we are as a country. And I think that those arguments need to be countered, which is what we attempted to do in the brief.
We reached out to the FOP for comment, but have yet to hear back. For Wilks, all he can do is wait, his last hope tied to a body that, if the FOP succeeds, may no longer exist.
My last hope is on the Baltimore City Review Board to see the outcome of their findings, and then it'd be like a big decision making, putting both of them, Baltimore Internal Affairs together with the Baltimore City Review Board, and then go from there.
Another setback for police reform in a state that seems to need it, but lacks the political wherewithal to implement it.
Police investigating police some of them be family, some of them be close friends. They go to book clubs, they have a chess club, things of that nature. So how can you have somebody that's real close with somebody investigating someone? It's not going to work out. Now, if you put civilians that doesn't really have to say so about that officer, then you have a better outcome far as anybody that's going through the process that I'm going through.
This is Taya Graham and Stephen Janis reporting for the Real News Network in Baltimore City, Maryland.